The Heat took care of business on Wednesday, beating the corpse of the New Orleans Pelicans. How did Jimmy Butler perform in his first game back? We'll break down Jimmy's return and Tyler Herro's big night on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And boy, do we have a fun show for you today. We're recording this after the Heat's win over the Pelicans. Bam Adebayo delivered for the Heat to ice the game. Jimmy Butler returned from for his first game since December 20th. But we have to start, I feel like we have to start with Tyler Herro. 32 points on 11 of 22 shooting. He scored 21 points in the second half. Then Bam scored on 3 straight possessions in the last 2.5 minutes to put this game away. David, this is not a good Pelicans team. They are injured. They are not good. But the Heat were without Terry Rozier. Jimmy Butler was clearly limited after being off for 13 days. But Herro and Bam stepped up, carried the team to the win. This is what you pay them for, David. This is why they're making the big bucks.
It's a win. It is a win against a team that they should have beat. And so you can be happy with that from the Heat fan perspective. I'm not going to put too much on this. I'm not going to look at this through rose-colored glasses because I don't think it requires that sort of false optimism or any sort of optimism, really. It was a solid win against a team that you had to beat. And, the Pelicans struggle on the road. They've struggled all season. Obviously, injuries are the reason for that, but this is the NBA, and we saw the Washington Wizards get their 6th win of the season tonight. So, you never know what can happen on a night-to-night basis, and you don't want to fall prey to a trap game where you're, again, losing to a team that you have to beat. And so I like the effort from Tyler, obviously. He had a monster night, and that should be lauded. I like Bam's performance in the fourth quarter. He looked like he was fluid, a little bit more comfortable with that mid-range shot, a little bit more aggressive, attacking Daniel Tice and Yves Missi when he was in the game. And so I like that performance, and I think they got some nice performances from a couple of other players as well that we'll talk about in the next segment. So as far as the overall theme of the game, Tyler's big night, Jimmy's return, and Miami gets the win they need to do.
Yeah, and they move up to 6th in the Eastern Conference. They've won 4 of their last 5 games.
Yeah,
they're doing what they have to do, and they've done most of it. Obviously without Jimmy Butler, who just came back for this, and so you get him back. Look, he was clearly limited in this game. He's been off for a long time. He hasn't played since December 20th. It shouldn't be shocking that he didn't look like he was at full force. I think there is his basketball conditioning was not there. He looked really sluggish in that third quarter. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter, and we are going to talk about that a little bit later on because Eric Spoelstra had some remarks about that. But he also said, Spo did before the game, that Jimmy was going to play, that there's no minutes restriction, but they're going to manage it. And I suppose the way that he managed it was he wasn't going to play in that fourth quarter, and he didn't deserve to play in that fourth quarter. And like I said, we'll get to a little bit of that later. But they found a good group. And they were headlined by Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo. And by the way, Duncan Robinson was also awesome in this game, particularly in the first half. And, I couldn't help but think, I'm watching this game, and Miami was basically shooting 50% from 3 or 40+ percent from 3. And it was 50% from Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson combined for most of this game. And I'm like, this is why you start those two guys with Tyler and Duncan Robinson. It creates so much space. Yeah, we know that. But also they could just put the ball in the basket a lot. And they both did it a little bit from 2-point range. They got into the paint a little bit, both of them for layups. Tyler Herro with that floater. But Miami won this game also because they won the math battle. They won the battle from beyond the arc, and that was huge, despite the fact that Trey Murphy was hitting logo threes.
Yeah, unexpected performance from Murphy. He's a good player, but I didn't expect that kind of a breakout from
34 points on 5 of 15 shoot. He took 15 3-pointers.
It's good to see Duncan perform at this level. You're right about pointing out that kind of spacing, because when he had it today, he didn't require a lot of space. He was just letting it fly and was able to hit on those shots, it makes such a difference for this Heat team. Like, this is unfortunately, though, something that we've seen too much of, and also when it works beautifully. Miami depends on 3-point shooting because they lack an ability to get to the rim easily. They lack that kind of definitive scorer who can take over games, and I don't think that's Jimmy Butler. I don't know if it's ever going to be Jimmy Butler again. Tyler had a big game, but a lot of his work being again from the perimeter and then able to get to the rim on occasion, or the mid-range, spotting up here and there. But they need their 3-point shooting to be virtually elite for them to be able to pull out wins against good teams and occasionally even against bad teams. And so we saw that tonight. And
Yeah, I mean, that's the case for a lot of teams now these days. And I hear you, right? Like, you want them to have that other mode. I really like Tyler Herro's performance. He actually started with a couple of baskets in the paint. Like, he went to that floater early, and then New Orleans kind of walled it off, and they went to that dribble handoff over and over between Tyler Herro and Bam. Bam had 10 assists in this game. It was a parade of dribble handoffs, whether it was to Tyler Herro or Duncan Robinson. And sometimes their offense was as simple as, well, Tyler Herro did it last time, so Duncan Robinson's going to do it this time. And it worked, right? Both of them had great games. And I love that partnership that's starting to and not just from this game, but we've seen it in the beginning part of the season of Miami's offense. When you boil it down, is essentially that dribble handoff game, that same dribble handoff game that fueled that run to the finals in the bubble. It's back, and it's better because Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson are playing together now on the court. Like, they're finally able to be on the court at the same time, where that was not a thing that they were able to do in the past. There's a lot of different reasons. We've talked about it before, but the fact that they're able to be on the court and they can toggle between dribble handoffs with Tyler, dribble handoffs with Duncan Robinson, it's twice as many dribble handoffs. It's all over the place, and you see how it works because you have Bam, who's such an elite screen setter. I think the best screen setter in the NBA, certainly top 3 by any margin. And he's obviously a good passer. He's got such good feel for getting those dribble handoff games. That was something that was right away with Duncan Robinson, and it's developed over time with Tyler Herro. And now that Tyler's really embraced taking these quick trigger 3-pointers, you've seen like the dividends really pay off on that 2-man game.
I'm glad you brought it up because I think we're seeing what we saw from the spaced out offense earlier in the season kind of blend in elements from the past to incorporate Bam at a higher level and maximize what he can do and take advantage of, as you said, the 2 elite shooters in that starting lineup. And it really, really works to make some nice offense. Like, again, maybe not dominating, but you want to make things as easy as you possibly can for yourself. And I think that's certainly something that we're seeing from this Heat team, where you generate those kinds of points. Now, again, it requires a little bit too much of those shots to fall, and maybe you won't get that every night. But on a night like today, when they did, you can see how everything works together and how it's evolved over the course of the season. It's not just putting it in, trying to dump it into the paint and trying to kick it back out and see if maybe somebody might be open for the perimeter. It's about creating offense, flowing from the perimeter, seeing what you can generate, and attacking when those teams are there. We saw a number of times either Duncan, Tyler, Nico, a lot of guys just going into the paint and being able to attack the rim more easily that way. So I think this is an evolved version of what we saw from that kind of offense that was incorporated earlier in the season, and it's working a lot more fluidly.
And another thing I like too, we saw a little bit of a rotation tweak in this game where Jimmy and Bam would come out at the same time. And that used to be a thing that Eric Spoelstra did, and they had to get away from it and different things like that. But we're seeing that happen now. And then they are getting into the second unit that has Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Jovic, and Kel'el Ware with Tyler Herro. And in this game, it was Alec Burks because Rozier was serving his 1 game for suspension for spearing Amen Thompson. I really like that look. Like, those 3 youngsters on the court, and Eric Spoelstra was asked about it after the game, and he basically was like, look, they've earned their way onto the court and all these things. But he also said, like, we're getting into certain lineups that we just like the combinations, and they work. And those 3 work really well together. And one of my notes that I had was this possession in the second quarter. Yeah, in the second quarter, Nikola Jovic gets into the post. Remember we called it out the other day after one of these games where Jovic was just like, all right, I'm going to bully. It was after the Houston game. He was just bullying some Jabari Smith Jr. in the post. Went to it again. Dribble. 4th dribble. Draws that double team. Jaime Jaquez, who's awesome on those slot cuts and always has been since he got into the NBA, hits that slot cut, bounce pass to Jaime. Jaime then kicks it right to Kel'el Ware, who's chilling in the dunker spot. and it's an easy dunk for Khalil Ware. And I'm like, oh my God, the three youngsters, the kids, all touched the ball and made offense together. It's like I don't know, like when your kid like makes a sandwich out of the toaster oven for the first time. It's like, wow, you made grilled cheese. Like, congrats. It's like, whoa, you figured it out, guys. This is great. You did it all on your own. You don't need me anymore.
Yeah, I think look, I might be reading into it, and maybe it's also just wishful thinking, but I think you have to almost prepare for a post Jimmy world, and part of that is relying on these young players and seeing what they can do together, and you have to play them, and so we saw Khalil Ware go from not getting any playing time at all to going to the Sioux Falls Skyforce, and then now slowly being incorporated into earning, I think, the backup spot. They trade Thomas Bryant, and certainly that clears a lot for a space for him. And then, Kevin Love, unfortunately, hasn't been very effective in his minutes this season. And so you kind of have to rely on somebody. Yeah, he did not play. It was a coach's decision, right? Or it wasn't
he was available, did not play. But
DNPCD.
The young guys, like we said, big part of this win. Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo. You know where we're going next. Credit cookies coming up.
Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, obviously, or concerts, theater, comedy shows. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert just this past year. I went to go see Fish, and it was a wonderful time. The energy and excitement, they're unforgettable. And now GameTime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, GameTime Picks. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So often it's like an impulse buy, and you just want to cut to the chase. Well, guess what? It can do so easily. I was looking for tickets for an upcoming concert, again, at the Fish show, and I used the GameTime app, and with GameTime Picks, I found amazing deals. It could even see the views from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost upfront. No surprise fees at checkout. Who doesn't love that? So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. Get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's GameTime. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show is to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Well, David, it is another Heat win. Miami's 4th out of the last 5 games, which means it's time for the tastiest Locked On Heat segment. It's time for, pull up the music here, credit cookies.
Everybody loves seasonal cookies. We're getting to eat a lot of them lately.
I ate a lot of cookies, and this is not even a credit cookie like gimmick. I ate way more cookies than I usually do, even in this Christmas Hanukkah season. It was a lot.
Well, the young kids all had their hands in the cookie jar, and so we'll talk about them. We're going to start off, obviously, with Tyler Herro. He had the big night, and so we give him 3 credit cookies right away. Impressive showing from him. Not only did he have the 32 points, but he also had 4 assists and, that's it. 4 assists and 1 steal, 1 rebound. So I thought he had a bigger night on a rebounding edge, but you know what? He didn't need to. 5 of 12 for 3-point shooting, 11 of 22 overall for the floor, and 5 of 5 for the free throw line. That number keeps ticking in the right direction. I love it. Big night from Tyler.
He had one. He had the scoop layup where I don't know that I've seen them do this shot quite this way before. He gets the ball in both hands, scoops up, a little James Harden-esque, right, where he draws the foul. The guy swipes down on both of his arms, scoops up, but then finishes the play, goes with one hand,
yes,
and then goes off the high corner of the glass. I'm like,
fouled on the gather, and then takes the extra step to scoop it up, gets the and one opportunity. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And it was off that high corner of the glass with the offhand, I think. And it was
off the left.
He is so, and I'll always go back to this. When Udonis Haslem told me a couple years ago, Tyler Herro is the most skilled offensive player I've ever been around. And maybe there's some of that's like dripping in hyperbole, but
sure. I mean,
he is a very skilled offensive player, right? Yeah, he played with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and all these guys. But that's when Tyler does that kind of thing, I often kind of that quote kind of pops up. I recall that quote, and he is so skilled and only getting better.
He's a bucket. Yeah, it's an impressive season from him. I don't Like maybe Miami's season hasn't stood out in any particular way except for the drama with Jimmy now of late. But if people around the country aren't following Heat basketball and they haven't been watching what Tyler Herro has done, they're doing themselves a disservice. And if he does not get the kind of like at this point, he should really be a lock as an all-star. I don't think
I
you
think
could
he
say that
is.
there are 12 players. Like, you never know. There's
That's true.
always
You never know how the
one.
voting is gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always one where maybe it's just the perspective of a fan base or even us as media members because we see him every time. But it's if you're not watching him play, you should be watching him play because he is absolutely an all-star. And,
So
and again,
people can, if they don't know, people can vote for All-Star now. Like voting
yeah,
is open. We haven't gotten our first returns yet, but I would love for like Heat Nation to come out and really move Tyler Herro up the charts. Like
yeah,
vote for Bam, vote for Jimmy if you want, but every time you cast a vote, you should be voting for Tyler Herro. Like the Heat Nation needs to show up for this guy and let people know. Bam Adebayo was asked about Tyler after the game and his All-Star candidacy, and he said, he's like, as a multi-time All-Star myself, like there's seasons where you just feel it.
yeah.
And Tyler's feeling it, and we're all feeling it with him. Like he is an
Good,
all-star. I think that
good.
I thought it was a cool quote. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Bam, he also gets a couple credit cookies. Just a great all-around game. 1 rebound shy, surprisingly, of a triple-double. Also had 10 assists, 9 rebounds, and 23 points. 9 of 14 overall from the floor. Missed both of his three-point attempts. I feel like
Yep.
that number has been going in the opposite direction of where it should be or where we expect it to be. But you know what? We'll accept it because I think his overall game is still showing up more regularly than not. And so I hope that a lot of the Heat fans have been satisfied with Bam's performance of late because I think he's been very steady and much more consistent with Jimmy's absence. And so I think you're starting to see that the two-headed snake of Bam and Tyler is working. As long as they get contributions from everybody else, they'll be able to continue winning at a pretty high level. So we'll see if it continues to progress. Duncan
So
Robinson, as
wait,
you
I'm
called
sorry.
out.
On Bam there.
Yeah.
He was asked about the triple-double, missing it by a
Mm,
rebound. He pretended to
that he
not
didn't
know
know.
that he was 1 rebound away. I'm
Really?
like, you knew you were 1 rebound.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, he pretended to not know that he was only a rebound away from getting a triple-double, but then immediately knew where he stood on Miami's all-time triple-double list.
Yeah.
And was like, yeah, but I'm second in all-time triple doubles, right? And everybody was like, I don't have that information. Like, as quickly
Second
as you
to
have
whom
that.
at this point? Second is to whom?
I think
Is
it's
it LeBron?
LeBron.
Dwayne? Yeah.
It might be it's LeBron, or it might be Jimmy.
I it's be LeBron. I mean, well, in 4 seasons, who knows? But maybe not. It might be Jimmy. You might be right
I'm
about
gonna
that.
I'm gonna pull it up while I'm talking here. But and then in terms of the 3-point shooting, you're right. He missed the 2-1. He took one that I really liked. It was in the rhythm of the offense. The one thing I want to see from him, he's so slow on the release. Like the whole thing
Yeah.
is slow. Like that dip and then into the release is so slow. I'd like him to just go for it. And we've been in practices where he's shooting it in practices. It's not nearly that slow. Like he's letting it go.
Right.
And we see and we watch him at practice, and obviously he's not being guarded, but he missed it was a wide open one that I'm talking about even in this game.
Yeah.
I just want to see him shoot it the way that he shoots in practice. I don't know. And you've talked about his hesitancy. Maybe that's just all it is. But I'm going to keep looking up this triple-double thing and while you get to your next
All
one.
right. Well, I'll get to Duncan Robinson next, who went 7 of 13 from the floor, including 3 of 7 from three-point range. So that means he went 4 of 6 from the floor in his attacks to the basket. So that's impressive. Also had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal, along with his 17 points. So that's a great overall night for him. So I also gave him 2 credit cookies. So that's 7 total, which means that the last 3 remaining credit cookies are split 1 apiece to the kids with their hands in the cookie jar. 1 for Niko Jovic, 1 for Jaime Jaquez, and 1 for Khalil Ware. I think this was a great game from Jaime. I thought it was, they all deserve credit cookies. You could argue with the numbers if you want to, but I think Nico, Jaime, and Khalil all deserve at least 1. If you want to argue that they get more, you'd have to take one from either Bam or Duncan. But I think their nights were solid in the minutes that they played. Nico, in particular, just 8 points, but also had 7 rebounds and 6 assists. So he was making an impact in other ways, things that we have not necessarily seen from him. Like we've seen the scoring game, but we haven't seen the impact in other realms. I think this was a great opportunity for him to showcase that he can do a lot more. Khalil, 4 of 4 from the floor, including a 3-point shot. Also had 5 rebounds and an assist. So 10 points for him. That was a great, solid outing for him. And Jaime, I think, was really aggressive as well, taking advantage of some opportunities. 5 of 9 from the floor for his 12 points. Also finished with 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. So good overall statistic production from those 3 guys.
Absolutely. And finally getting real production from those guys. I mean, we're talking about first-round picks, right? Like, we could talk about, and Spo is very complimentary of Khalil Ware's pick and roll coverage after the game. I thought that was interesting. And that's basically what he was saying, is like, he's got to get better at pick and roll coverage earlier in the year to get on the court. Well, now he's getting compliments for his pick and roll coverage. Made it clear he's still room to develop, obviously, but he's doing the things that he's told. Talking to some players after the game too, specifically Tyler Herro, talking about how Khalil Ware is like, they use the player coach speak that he's a sponge and stuff, but like that has come up multiple times now with these players. Like, you're really getting a sense that they respect Khalil and the work that he's putting in and how much he's developing. Like, it's very encouraging when these guys talk about it. It's not quite like Jaime in training camp in Boca Raton, where like this guy's like a star like right away. Like, there was just like crazy, like over the moon for this guy. But it's getting there now. Like, I think they're getting more and more impressed with him the more time they spend around him. Spo was also asked about Jaime Jaquez and just sort of a little bit of a down year that he's having. He says, quote, "He just needs to clear his mind, become a defensive playmaker. He's at his best when he just focuses on doing winning things. If you're too focused on what everybody else wants you to do, you need to have a certain amount of points per game increase after your rookie year. That can confuse you," end quote. Direct, honest, accurate.
I think so. Sometimes you can get too focused on those kinds of things, but with him, especially with his ability in the transition and the ways that he can create around basket, it's like if he can force a turnover or at least put a pressure on a ball handler. We've seen that, I think, increasing over the last few games where, let's say even on help defense, or if he's on a one-on-one matchup, he can still kind of at least poke the ball free, or at least just use his physicality to make a drive to the basket a little bit more difficult. And that kind of leads to somebody else maybe initiating a turnover. We've seen that kind of, again, taking the right direction. So I'm glad to see Spo call it out. And I think that it certainly leads to a path for Jaime to be much more productive and effective in an in-game situation. I don't know if it's worth bringing up, but I thought it was a great statistic that I texted you about, brought up in the broadcast tonight, that the Heat was 6 drafted players on the roster. That's the most they've had since 1994, before Pat Riley took over the next year.
The most in the Pat Riley era.
Yeah. It kind of shows the evolution of this roster, because obviously with Pat, he trades draft picks. You don't have one many years. Whoever is drafted by the team eventually gets traded for another superstar, like Michael Beasley for LeBron, etc. Like, we see that a lot during the Pat Riley era. This is kind of leaning into something else. It's like you've got your core, but you've got Bam and Tyler as part of that core, which has not always been the case. You had Dwayne,
also drafted.
But you had to bring in Chris Bosh. You had to bring in LeBron James. Yep. Yeah, exactly. But most of the time, the players that are your stars, Shaquille O'Neal, Alonzo Mourning, Tim Hardaway, those guys were required via trade. It's a different mindset for this franchise now.
Bam is 3rd on the all-time triple-double list. Jimmy Butler's 1st. He's 13 triple-doubles for his career. LeBron has 9. Bam has 8. So he's 1 away from tying LeBron, and a few more away from passing Jimmy Butler there. All right. We talked a little bit about Jaime Jaquez Jr. We're talking about Tyler Herro. The big elephant in the room, Jimmy Butler, did not play in the 4th quarter. Why? We'll tell you what Eric Spoelstra said after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Speaking of finishing the season strong, Wes, are the Dolphins going to make the playoffs? No, they're not. That's the Dolphins. They don't make the playoffs. They won't make the playoffs. They might win, but they're not making the
last 2 years. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know, but they're not going to do anything anyway. But this is false hope. The fact that they've been building momentum over the last couple of games, etc., doesn't make any difference.
Well, it's all false hope, sure, but they could still make the playoffs and then give me that false hope. Like, let me at least have some hope, even if it's false, I suppose.
They pulled you back in. You're distancing yourself from the team. I was so proud of you. You had made a clean break, and they won 2 games, and it's like, yeah, I'm back, baby.
They're 7-2 over the last whatever. So we need to win. We have to beat the Jets, which we probably will. And then the Chiefs need to lose, or the Chiefs need to beat the Broncos. But it was reported today that the Chiefs are sitting Patrick Mahomes and all these other players because they don't need this. It doesn't matter. They don't want to risk injury.
Right.
But they're still the Chiefs. I wonder, like, so we all have to root for the Chiefs and obviously root for the Dolphins. Both of these games have a 4:25 start time. So we're not even going to know like one before the other one. So it's going to be a 2 TV day for a lot of Dolphins fans. 2 screen day.
FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W, something the Dolphins won't do. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's really
It's ridiculous.
Not only can you bet on who will win the games, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score, how many points, etc. There's so much you can find only at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. Yeah, FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Thanks to everybody in the Locked On Heat Insider community that asks questions for our post-game shows. You could join the Locked On Heat Insider community via the show, the link in the show notes. It's free for 14 days, and then it goes to $4.99 a month after that. You can cancel at any time. No sweat, no questions asked. We won't be upset, even if we will be a little bit. We won't judge you, but maybe a little bit. But we've been also sharing a ton of intel on the Jimmy Butler front before we ever even talk about it on the podcast. And sometimes things that we don't even share on the podcast for whatever reason that we'll share with our exclusive Locked On Heat Insider community. So now's the time to get in on that. Now would be the time to sign up. Speaking of, this question comes from William B. Was Jimmy Butler playing lethargic because something lingering, or is he potentially going to be just quote unquote present for basketball until he knows where his next contract is coming from? And did this lead to him being benched in the fourth quarter? Flavio also asks, what do you guys think about about Jimmy Butler's game? Because I think he was a little bit lazy. What's your guys' opinion? So David, Eric Spoelstra did talk about this after the game. He said, in regards to Jimmy not playing in that fourth quarter, 13 days is a long time away, and I just went with the group there in the fourth that was giving us the most, and to see if that group could close it out, end quote. What's your take?
Yeah, I buy what Spo's saying there, but I also kind of don't necessarily lean into it. I think if you had started to see Jimmy play the way that we expect him to, and look, 13 days is absolutely a long time off, but we've seen Jimmy come back from a long rest, and he winds up playing great because you know what? He needs that rest. And I know that was, if the reports are true, and he says they are true, he was really sick and he needed to get back into his conditioning, etc.
He was sick. I mean, the guy did get IVs. I was able to confirm that stuff. Like now, 5 days or 5 games sick, like that's a whole different animal, right? But I do know that there was something, to the degree to which only Jimmy Butler can speak to that.
Perhaps I'm going to be a little irrational here, but I think there was a mental aspect to this. I think Jimmy was kind of checked out, and I think that's a shame because we've talked about it before. Like, he's kind of showcasing himself now for teams around the league. If he's not committed to Miami, and it seems like maybe he might not be, I'm just saying maybe. If that's the case, then he also wants to be able to show other teams that they're going to be making a trade for a player that's going to make a contribution, not just during the playoffs, but also during the regular season. That at 35, that he is deserving of the max contract extension that he's looking for. And that being the case, it benefits him to go out there and play. So, that kind of counters my argument in some sense, but I can't help but look at that player and see Jimmy kind of just standing off to the corner, not impacting a play, not kind of really being enmeshed into the offense and making an impact that way. Just not doing Jimmy type things. And so that being the case, I think he was passive. I don't know if it was with the goal of just saying, I'm not really here. I don't really feel like showing up for this group, etc.
There is a micro view of this where we can just look at, okay, what happened in this game? And then the macro view that you're kind of talking about of, is this a sign of bigger, worse, or darker things going on with him potentially? And in terms of the micro view, why he didn't play in the fourth quarter tonight? Because he stunk. All right. That third quarter, he drifted into the corner, didn't do anything. There were several possessions there where there was one specific possession where Duncan Robinson and Bam Adebayo were sort of floundering in a dribble handoff that wasn't really working. And Jimmy was just standing there under the basket with a bunch of guys around him, an obvious situation where he would come up grab the ball and just be like, okay, that wasn't working. Let me handle this now. And then go into an ISO thing, the thing that we've seen Jimmy do a million times. And he just stood there and watched it not work. And then the Heat didn't score. And there's another possession where they call a timeout. They come out of the timeout and Bam has to tell Jimmy where to stand. And he's like, no. And Jimmy's like, where do I go? And Bam's like, you're in the corner. And then he comes up from the corner, gets the ball, and then immediately the entire possession sort of fizzles out. And obviously I wasn't in the huddle and I don't know what the play call was supposed to be, but I do know it wasn't supposed to be that. And I do know it kind of fizzled out once Jimmy Butler got involved. And I apparently didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. So there's the mental part of it there, right? There's also maybe the other part where he was just, he would get the rebound and he would immediately look to just get it out to somebody else. And he wasn't driving any offense. I want to withhold judgment because he was sluggish. Like even just the way he was running, he wasn't running the same. He was sluggish up and down the court. And I was something that I can see in person there. 13 days is a long time off, especially if there was an injury or an illness or whatever. The Heat play again tomorrow night. If it was just a matter of getting his basketball wind back, I'll be interested to see that. But there's also the matter of the mental checking in. So that's kind of the macro part of this too is, well, he needs to be more checked in. He needs to be more checked in. And Bam was actually asked about like getting Bam back or getting Jimmy back. And he said in the locker room afterwards that, it is a little strange. Like we've been playing without him for 5 games going into this. And we've had a little bit of success offensively. And I just think for being off as long as he was, no matter how long the team you've been together, there is just sort of a folding in period, an adjustment. And we'll get him in, we'll get him touches, and we'll get him to his spot. So I'm withholding judgment on everything for now. But it's not as if we haven't seen Jimmy Butler be passive in the past and then come back to the big game. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen here? Cody writes in, Jaime is looking better and better with increased minutes due to Jimmy's absence. And tonight without Terry, is he rounding into form after a slow start to the season? So we started talking about Jaime there. I read Eric Spoelstra's quote. I probably shouldn't have stepped on this question ahead of time, but I do think that Jaime's best basketball this season is ahead of him.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. He couldn't get much worse, unfortunately. Like he was really struggling, but finding ways to impact the game, especially with his defensive tenacity, forcing turnovers, attacking the basket. It's starting to come around. It's not to say that he's added much more versatility in his approach or anything like that, but if you can approach with intent and authority, and I think we've seen that more of late, it certainly makes much more of a difference.
The cutting is just so much better. Just cutting more often, being more intentional, to use your word about it. That stuff is huge. I remember Eric Spoelstra talking about Jaime as a rookie and just being like, he always eats up space. And it felt like Jaime knew that he was supposed to be a better three-point shooter this year. So he was almost a little too deferential to the three-point shot, which has been going on in at a career low rate, even when you kind of go to his college days. So the fact that you just do the 2-pointers, man. Like we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how it all fits in the offense, but we got to just get you going. Did have a nice corner 3 in this game that he shot confidently. William B writes in, Tyler's playing a lot of minutes, not just playing, but being on ball a lot. Will this hurt him come playoff time? Should the Heat try and find a backup point guard before the trade deadline? That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've talked about other options, and there aren't any. I think Miami's just kind of playing it a little bit slowly. I mean, we know what their contract situation is already. They obviously brought up Isaiah Stevens. I'm sure he'll get a look. I think they're just kind of working him in, and we haven't seen a lot of minutes from from Keshad Johnson. We haven't seen anything from Josh Christopher. So I think they're just slowly trying to figure out when and how they can use these players, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. My feeling is that they probably will add some kind of a point guard, but maybe they're waiting to see if somebody gets waived. And I don't know, given their current CBA situation and their roster construction, can they add somebody as a buyout candidate late in the season, or are they prevented from doing so?
It would be like in March-ish when they can do it. So they have to wait a little bit after the trade deadline. But I don't know. In terms of my concern, I'm not concerned. This is a situation where I'm like, let's just have the nice thing. And maybe I should be concerned. Maybe this is definitely a fair thing to ask. I am just personally not concerned because I'm just enjoying it right now for what it is.
And the playoffs also seem very far away, and there might
Yeah.
be a major upheaval to this roster in the next month or so, and that kind of changes the line of thinking. So we might not be worried so much about a backup point guard if you wind up trading Jimmy, and who knows what you get back in return for that.
And
So
I
I
don't
think
think what Tyler is doing is like it's hard. I don't think it's hard on the body despite the increased usage, right? He's taking a lot of shots, but a lot of those shots are coming off of those handoffs from Bam in a two-man game.
yeah.
That seems pretty easy. Like he's not dribbling the ball, the air out of the ball into these mid-range shots. He is getting to the basket more. He's getting to the free throw line more, but he's not getting to the free throw line at like 10 attempts a game. Like not like what these big guys are. He's just getting to the line that commensurate with the kind of player that he is. And
I think the concern is from what we saw from him in the Boston series last year. And obviously that was a team that was without Jimmy, without Terry Rozier. And so the focus could be more on Tyler, but do you think it's sustainable? Or when a team like Boston or Cleveland or somebody else sends that double, is he going to still be able to initiate offense on ball at the high level that he is? But to your
he
point,
has been better.
You've made several times.
No, he's been better at getting out of those traps and stuff this year, but Boston and Cleveland are two of the better defenses in the league. Like I don't know that anybody's awesome against any ball handler Tyler Hero's size is going to do a great job.
But he's been able to incorporate that playmaking. Like that was what I was going to say is that you pointed this out. The playmaking is certainly going to help because now he's making opportunities for himself. And I think he's found that balance between I'm aggressive, I'm an all NBA scorer, and yet I can still make plays for others. And so we'll see how that plays out in the playoffs. But again, that's so far away. Let's just focus on the next month or two before we start getting into playoff predictions.
Cross that bridge when we get there. Last thing here, boots on the ground dispatch. The kiss cam needs to be illegal.
Oh, you've hated it for a decade since we've been talking basketball together.
And the Heat found a way to make it worse. The Heat found a way to make it worse tonight. They had somebody talking over the kiss cam, like egging people on to show a public display of affection. What world is this? That this is okay. It should never be okay. It's so gross. I don't need to see strangers making out. I hate it for all the reasons I've always hated it. But then also having like a narrator over it, like it's like weird, like voyeuristic. It makes nobody who likes this. Who's like, you know what? I love going to arenas. Oh, well, it's just the game and being in the atmosphere. No. Maybe the food and get a beer on a Tuesday night. Like that much. Yeah, not really. I really like the part where I get to watch strangers kiss each other in the commercial break. Like, who's going to the game for this? Nobody wants this.
No.
And nobody wanted you narrating over it. Miami Heat. If you're listening at this point in the episode, I don't know if they're listening in the 36th minute, but please, I am begging you, never do that again. Never do that again. It was awful. Kiss cams need to be illegal. Just get rid of it. You guys do so many great entertainment things so well. You really do. And I was just telling somebody off the podcast, go to a Heat game. You'll have so much fun. Nobody does a better job with in-arena entertainment. You don't need this. Get rid of it.
Kiss cam. Yeah.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.